Mendoza is the selection for the Las Vegas Raiders. I understand they brought in Kirk Cousins, but best case scenario, Kirk Cousins is a Band-Aid when you look at the long-term future for the organization.
No, and I know everyone's got Arvell Reese going to the Jets. I've got David Bailey. That's from the latest information I've got, not necessarily directly from the decision makers of the Jets, but their philosophy, from what it seems like, they'd rather have the guy that's the more polished pass rusher at the moment, but it could still be Reese. There's still 3 weeks to go. I'm getting a lot of people saying there's no way Carnell Tate falls out of the top 10. There's no way Caleb Downs falls out of the top 10. There's a way. There's absolutely a way.
6 players, 3 on offense, 3 on defense, and every single one of them is connected to the most chaotic, controversial, unpredictable draft storyline of the entire pre-draft process. The analysts are fighting, the GMs are leaking, the smokescreens are suffocating. And sitting right in the middle of all of it, holding 3 first-round picks and enough draft capital to completely reshape their franchise, are the Cleveland Browns. The team that has been the punchline of NFL rebuilds for 2 decades now holds the keys to the most fascinating draft night in recent memory. What they do with Monroe Threeling, Carnell Tate, and Jeremiah Love on offense, and how Ruben Bain, Sonny Styles, and Caleb Downs fall on defense will determine not just Cleveland's future, but the entire complexion of the 2026 NFL Draft. This is the story nobody is telling cleanly enough. Until now. The Browns own picks 6, 20, and 24 in round 1, 3 first-round selections, the byproduct of the Deshaun Watson disaster, the Travis Hunter trade, and a front office that has been aggressively accumulating capital while the roster burned around them. 3 picks sounds like leverage, and it is, but it's also a trap. Because every analyst, every insider, every mock draft currently circulating has Cleveland doing something different with those picks. Kuiper has them trading back from 6, collecting more capital and still landing quality players at 12, 20, and 24. Felice at NFL.com has them staying put and taking a specific player that would genuinely shock the fan base. The CBS Sports mock stream had Pete Prisco selecting Monroe Freeling at 6, while openly admitting he wouldn't personally make that pick. The disagreement isn't minor, it's total, and it centers directly on these 6 players.
Start here, because this is where the controversy lives. Jeremiah Love is the most debated prospect in the entire draft. Not the most talented, that argument belongs to someone else, but the most debated, because his position creates an ideological war every single time his name gets mentioned. Dane Brugler has him second on his overall board, 6.9 yards per carry, 49 plays of 10-plus yards in a single season at Notre Dame. Legitimate receiving threat out of the backfield. The tape is genuinely elite.
And Jeremiah Love's right there as well. What he has done, what he did the last 2 years at Notre Dame, 6.9 yards per carry, 49 plays of 10-plus yards just last year alone. And it's not just what he does carrying the football between the tackles. It's what he does as a receiver and a pass catcher.
But here's the Cleveland connection that nobody is discussing loudly enough. The Cleveland Browns are rebuilding. They have a quarterback situation that is, charitably speaking, unresolved. Contrary to the suggestion that Watson is gone, he remains on the roster, with some analysts predicting he will start, while others favor giving rookie sensation Sanders the starting role. The 2026 Browns quarterback room is undergoing a transition, also featuring Dylan Gabriel and potentially other rookies. The offense needs construction from the ground up. He's making that case for Tennessee. But the logic applies identically to Cleveland with Shedeur Sanders. The counter-argument, however, is devastating. Pete Prisco on the CBS stream was direct about his philosophy on running backs at premium picks. Does Jeremiah Love at pick 6 accelerate that construction? Or does spending that capital on a running back while your offensive line remains porous and your receiver room remains thin represent exactly the kind of misallocation of resources that has defined Cleveland's dysfunction for years?
You want to see growth from your second-year quarterback, the franchise guy in Cam Ward. Go get him the best offensive weapon in the draft. A 3-down running back who can impact on all 3 downs, not just in terms of running the football, but catching the football.
He's making that case for Tennessee, but the logic applies identically to Cleveland with Shedeur Sanders. The counter-argument, however, is devastating. Pete Prisco on the CBS stream was direct about his philosophy on running backs at premium picks.
That's what you do. Pull a running back off the shelf, off the shelf, off the shelf.
He said it sarcastically, mockingly, because he genuinely believes premium running back picks are organizational malpractice at this stage of roster construction. And for a Browns team that needs everything everywhere, that argument hits differently than it does for a contender adding a final piece.
Just look at the value that Christian McCaffrey brings to the San Francisco 49ers in Brock Purdy. Look at the value that Jahmyr Gibbs has brought to Detroit. Look at the value that Bijan Robinson has brought to Atlanta in terms of their offensive structure.
Those are legitimate comps, but here's the inconvenient truth embedded in every single one of those examples. McCaffrey arrived in San Francisco with an elite offensive line already in place. Gibbs landed in Detroit with a fully constructed roster around him. Robinson joined Atlanta with a Pro Bowl receiver already on the depth chart. Cleveland has none of those supporting structures. Love almost certainly won't be available at 20 or 24. If Cleveland wants him, they're taking him at 6. And that decision would be the most polarizing Browns draft pick in a generation.
This is the pick that makes the most sense for Cleveland, and the one that creates the most fascinating ripple effect through the entire top 10. Tate is the wide receiver everyone agrees on and nobody can stop talking about. Ohio State production, elite route running, reliable hands, the kind of receiver that makes quarterbacks look functional during a rebuild, which is exactly what Cleveland desperately needs around whoever is taking snaps in 2026. The Browns had 0 receivers crack 100 yards receiving in a single game last season. 0. The receiver room is the most urgent offensive need on the roster, outside of the quarterback position itself.
Tate is a defined, is he a 2 or a 1? We don't know. Say, what was he going to be? We know one thing he's going to define. He's going to catch the ball. That is automatic. He catches everything thrown his way. Outstanding route runner. He's got enough length. He tracks the deep ball exceptionally well.
Field Yates made the case for Tate going to a team in a similar situation, Tennessee at 4, with specific reasoning that applies directly to Cleveland's circumstances.
Wan'Dale Robinson helps. They retained Calvin Ridley. They drafted 2 wide receivers on day 3 last year. My lean right now is Carnell Tate.
Swap Tennessee's situation for Cleveland's, and the argument gets stronger. The Browns don't have a Wan'Dale Robinson. They don't have a Calvin Ridley. They have a receiver room that is genuinely one of the weakest in the entire NFL.
Where that first receiver comes off the board is going to be interesting. And we know the Browns desperately want a playmaker on the outside.
Brugler said it plainly. The Browns desperately want a playmaker on the outside, and Tate is the cleanest, safest, highest floor version of that playmaker in the entire draft class. But here's the problem. Mock drafts consistently have Tate disappearing between picks 4 and 8. If Dallas trades up, if Washington grabs him, if the Saints make a move, and Brugler specifically noted that the Saints rarely pass on Ohio State pass catchers, Tate could easily be gone before Cleveland picks at 6, which means the Browns might be forced to choose between taking Tate now or watching him walk out of their range entirely.
This is the silent controversy. The pick that analysts keep making for Cleveland while simultaneously expressing genuine reservations about. Freeling is the most available left tackle in this draft class with legitimate top 10 upside. He's long, athletic, and represents exactly the kind of blindside protection that every rebuilding team needs to establish before anything else works offensively. But Pete Prisco, picking for Cleveland on the CBS mock stream, said the quiet part loud.
But I think they're going to take Monroe Freeling here, a guy I would not take in this spot, by the way.
He then took Freeling anyway, because it's a predictive mock, because that's probably what Cleveland does. But the admission is damning. One of the most experienced draft analysts in the business doesn't believe in the pick he's making for your team.
Utah, who might end up being a better player, is going to be a better left tackle. But I think they're going to take Monroe Freeling here, a guy I would not take in this spot, by the way.
Let that sink in for Cleveland fans. The analyst making the pick for your team in a nationally broadcast mock draft is simultaneously telling you he thinks Utah's Spencer Fano is the better player. That's not analysis. That's resignation. That's an experienced voice watching a train leave the station and just documenting the departure.
Really only one guy that's a prototypical left tackle this worthy this early in the draft. I think the kid at Utah who might end up being a better player is going to be a better left tackle.
The Browns need left tackle help desperately. That part is not debatable. But spending the 6th overall pick on a player your most experienced analysts privately don't trust at that value, that's the Browns' experience distilled in a single draft decision. Spencer Fano from Utah offers an alternative, more athletic, more positionally flexible, potentially movable to center. Multiple analysts had Fano going to Cleveland in various mocks, but Fano has his own concerns around arm length that make teams nervous about his long-term viability on the blind side. Now the defense. And this is where Cleveland's draft gets genuinely explosive. Ruben Bain is the most physically dominant defensive prospect in this class, and the most controversial evaluation in the entire draft. Shorter arm length, didn't bench press at the combine, raw technique in certain situations. The analytics community has real concerns. But watch the tape for 5 minutes and those concerns start dissolving. Power, violence, motor, the kind of player who simply moves people against their will at the point of attack.
No one is going to question whether Ruben Bain is strong or not. Right? Because if he goes and he benches 225 34 times, what did we learn? Absolutely nothing.
Ran Carthen, a former NFL GM who has evaluated players at the highest level, came around on Bain publicly and explained the conversion.
Arm length thing, it is what it is, but the one thing I know that he has that you can't teach and he'll always be able to have is power. I've probably been the most critical of Ruben Bain than most people. Right, and I had to come around.
A former general manager publicly admitting he was wrong about a player. That doesn't happen often, and when it does, it means something. Here's the Cleveland connection that should have Browns fans absolutely locked in. At picks 20 or 24, Bain could realistically still be available. Multiple mocks have him going anywhere from 6 to 22. The range is enormous, and if he slides, if the arm length concerns push enough teams off him, Cleveland could land a potentially elite edge rusher with their 2nd or 3rd first-round pick. That's the dream scenario. A franchise left tackle or elite receiver at 6, Bain falling into their lap at 20, the rebuild suddenly having real foundational pieces on both sides of the ball simultaneously.
The player every analyst has the Cowboys trading up for. The player Robert Saleh supposedly covets for Tennessee. The player Dane Bugler believes could be the best defensive player in the entire draft class. And the player who, if the Cowboys don't trade up aggressively enough, could theoretically land in Cleveland's range.
Oh, that's an A+. He's going to end up being the best defensive player in this draft.
Prisco said it with complete conviction. Not a projection, not a hedge, a declaration. And then Bugler made the stakes explicit when discussing teams eyeing Styles.
Sonny Styles would be perfect for that Christian Parker defense, exactly what they're looking for. They have 2 first-round picks. Could they be tempted to move up? You know, we know the Browns are always willing to move back.
Read that carefully. Bugler is specifically naming the Browns as the team willing to move back, meaning Cleveland trading down from 6, collecting extra capital from Dallas, and potentially still landing elite defensive talent at 20 or 24.
You move up and you get them. And you got a guy who is dynamic and can be moving around. We talk about rare talents. That's exactly what Sonny Styles tested out as.
That's the trade scenario that changes everything. If Dallas gives Cleveland an extra 2nd or 3rd round pick to jump from 12 to 6 for Styles, the Browns suddenly have 4 or 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. The rebuild accelerates dramatically, and Styles, a generational linebacker talent, goes to a Cowboys defense that desperately needs him. Everybody wins, except every other team in the AFC North that now has to face both.
Here's the sleeper pick that could be the smartest thing Cleveland does all draft. Caleb Downs doesn't fit the traditional first-round safety profile in terms of size. He didn't test at the combine, he plays smaller than his frame suggests. Every conventional evaluation metric says he should wait. But the people who have actually watched every snap of his college career tell a completely different story.
I mean, talking to teams about his interview process and how Caleb Downs is sitting down and basically telling them, this is exactly how you guys run your scheme. This is exactly how I would do it. He's talking their language, unlike most college players are able to do.
Football intelligence, scheme comprehension, the ability to walk into an NFL interview room and break down coverages like a coordinator. Those traits don't show up in arm-length measurements. They show up in winning. At pick 24, if Downs is still available, Cleveland could land a potential centerpiece of their secondary for the next decade. A player smart enough to grow with a young defense. A player whose football IQ alone makes him worth premium draft capital. And here's the brutal irony. If the Giants take Downs at 5, Cleveland loses him before they even pick. But if he somehow slides, if the positional value debate pushes teams off him the way it always pushes teams off safeties, the Browns could steal the most complete football mind in the entire draft class with their 3rd first-round pick. 6 players, 3 picks, 1 franchise at the absolute crossroads of its rebuild. Does Cleveland take the generational running back and risk repeating the mistakes that have haunted premium positions for a decade? Do they grab the elite receiver their quarterback desperately needs? Or do they lock down the blind side with a tackle their own analysts quietly don't trust at that value? On defense, does Bain slide into their range and give them a foundational edge rusher? Does Dallas actually execute the Styles trade and hand Cleveland even more ammunition? Does Caleb Downs fall to 24 and become the smartest steal of the entire draft class? Every single one of these scenarios is possible. Several of them are probable. None of them are certain. The Browns have 3 first-round picks and a chance to completely rewrite their narrative in a single night. The capital is there. The opportunity is real. The question, the only question that has ever really mattered in Cleveland, is whether the people making the decisions are finally ready to get it right. Pittsburgh is waiting, and so is an entire fan base that has been waiting a very long time. What do you think the Browns should do with pick number 6? Are you taking Jeremiah Love or going wide receiver? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want more deep dives into the 2026 draft, make sure to hit subscribe.